You get involved in games, and particularly in technology. If you do just kind of a random sampling of a lot of trans people, you will discover they work in IT. Not necessarily games, but the number of programmers, game developers, just people working with computers in general, you find out that, wow, there's a lot of us. So I hid this for 54 years of my life. Stuff cropped up in my games. If you really look at some of my earliest things I wrote back in my 20s, there's hints. It's in there. But a lot of it being commercial product, I couldn't. I even went so far in the 80s when I wrote some role-playing projects to write some games that actually attacked transgender LGBT people. They were negative, and that was the way I was trying to compensate. But I dealt with this. What I ended up doing was waiting until my family was past the point where they needed me to survive. And my children were grown up, they were out of school. I'm working for a company that has a gender expression policy. There are other trans people working for the company I work for. And at that point, I just knew it was right. And I made plans. I didn't just come out. I planned for 8 months. And then last December, I let the world know. And I have lived as genetic since. It has been the one thing, and we talked about losing family, we talked about how important it is, families breaking up. I had 2 people in my life who I knew I couldn't lose. They were my kids. And my kids are both adults. And I made a point of talking to both of them separately, coming out to them in person, and separately they both came to me and said it doesn't matter. And that's really what we want as transgender people, for you to relate to us, is just to tell us, it doesn't matter.
Unfortunately, our hour is almost through. We have about 5 minutes for people who would like to ask questions. So please line up in the center aisle. There's a microphone right there.
And should we say the fact that, after the panel's over, if you still have other questions you don't have time for, I think we're going to be around, right?
Yes. We will definitely be around, both in here and outside the theater. Okay. You first.
Hey, my name is Neville. Especially thank you for your panel. And I know it sort of shouldn't matter. It sort of seems kind of big that you have at least the option to choose a female character in a lot of newer games like Mass Effect, where you can flip their game around, the game cover around, you can put the female character in the front. So I'm just curious, sort of, do you think that there should be the option to be a transgender character, like male, female, and other? Something like that? Or when you play as a character, what type of gender do you choose? If that's you or something that's you? I'm just curious.
I think I'm very proud to be a trans person, so I would definitely like it if there were positive trans characters, and definitely that as an option, because the intent of transitioning in a lot of ways is, existing on the part of the gender spectrum that you want to. I also take a lot of pride in being part of the trans community, and I would like if there was a positive character or just a positive way of portraying it that I could participate in. I think I would go for this.
I think part of the interesting thing about that question we have is in the argument of Poison, whether or not she's transgender, the side who says she isn't has been saying, well, it doesn't matter if she's trans, so what? She's a fighting game character. But it does matter because, like as Morgan said, it's representation. It's having that knowledge that even if, you select after to be transgender and you can't really see a difference in your characters, you're not going to, run around naked or anything. Even if you get a difference, if you know the fact of what your character is and how the connection is, I think that's a great deal.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of symbolic power that people totally underestimate because developers will say, oh, our character wasn't supposed to be represented in the trans community, but I don't think you get to choose what characters of yours end up as role models, that just sort of happens, so you might as well strive to do well and reach out to your community and ask them.
Yeah, Poison has become my favorite character in the new Street Fighter game. And the next question, please.
Hi, I'm Marla. Thanks for the panel. That's great. I have a question. I forget your name on the end.
I'm Chris.
Great. I know you mentioned something about like you had some backlash from publishers or whatever about something gender stuff you put into games. Like, what if maybe you and everybody else as developers or writers or whatever, like if you tried to say let's include like gender options in a game or like something like that, what has been the type of backlash from publishers and what are their reasons for not wanting that in a game?
So part of our responsibility as designers is you uphold the franchise that you work for. And as a result, in some instances, the shareholder, the keepers of that franchise have very specific views about how they want it portrayed. The biggest problem that comes to mind recently is we were doing a game called Mask of the Betrayer for Borderlands 2, and one of the characters is a companion named Gan, and Gan is a hack spawn. He can read dreams. He doesn't really care what you look like. He can just fall in love with your personality. And we tried to portray that as, here's how we'd like to do the relationship in the game. We're going to present it in a very mature format. But overall, they just came back to us and said, you know what, we would just prefer that there's no confusion there and just don't allow that as an option, which was pretty disappointing to us. So we've generally found the best way to go about it is that we would much rather just pursue role-playing games outside of franchises and make franchises of our own that are more accepting of those elements. And I think that's kind of the point of a role-playing game. You should be able to play the kind of character that you want to without someone else dictating it from above.
I wore my Mule t-shirt today in honor of Danny. I was wondering if you think she's getting more of her due today and whether she's inspired any of you. I heard your story, Rebecca, but if anybody else in the younger generation knows of her work, she made some very influential games. Technology that she used was important.
After the Kotaku article that they did that got a bit of stick for not coming out so well, and they ended, and then the whole process of the fact that the article had not turned out very sympathetic got a lot of attention. And now, if you type in, I look at these things all the time. If you type in transgender video games in Google, it's the second result every single time for that Kotaku article. And Auntie Pixelanti and several other people wrote some good articles about the problems with the Kotaku article. And honestly, them getting it wrong did a lot more favors for the community than anything else because it got the issue out there, and you're seeing even more trans-oriented articles because of that article, because of the problems it brought up. So she's definitely, I hope, getting something close to the due that she's deserved now.
Hello. Thank you for your great panel. It was amazing. I have a question about sort of less trans, more gender issue, but there's a new game coming out I just heard about that sort of rewards female players for playing female characters. And I had a very strong visceral reaction to this, and I was wondering what your thoughts on this was.
I don't know enough about the game, but I did hear that, and it was kind of like, what? That kind of, I don't like the idea, and I'm not exactly certain why they're doing it, but it's the thing about games is that they're an escape for people. And whatever that escape you need to be, maybe it's you're bored, you want something to play, but if you need to be somebody else because your real life is not, conducive to a good experience, you should be able to have that choice. And it's really weird to say, well, if you're female, you should play a female character, and we're going to reward you for that. It just feels like a really confusing message.
Squeaky.
I'm sorry, I actually have a question for you. I'm not familiar with the game that you're speaking about.
I think it's called Prime Worlds. It's
Worlds,
sort of
okay.
Dota kind of game. I just
Okay.
found out about it today.
Yeah, and players are going to get
So it's
stat bonuses or something in game if you play the gender or sex that you are in real life.
Yeah, to the point where you can't have a top level teen if you don't have a female character or a female player.
It connects your Facebook account. Yeah, so it knows via Facebook like what you really are.
It's to get more female gamers.
Well, playing the game should be your reward for playing the game.
So I'm actually super glad there's someone that knows D&D on the panel. I have a very slightly specific house question that I've come up a few times. Let's say you're playing D&D 3.5 and you have the character that's rolling a disguise check for a disguise outside their original gender basis. What if any kind of gender penalty or disguise penalty would you put on that disguise check? Given you don't have disguise kit.
You lost me at 3.5. No, my D&D experience came in a white box. And then had AD&D in front of it for a number of years. So I'm going to punt here. I actually quit playing Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing games when I actually started doing it for work and it wasn't fun anymore.
It's okay, it's for fun.
If I could interject, I did play a male dark elf character who cross-dressed as a female to survive the matriarchal dark elf society. Naturally. And we had a 20% penalty to it, which was -4 under the second edition rules.
Okay, Bert, thank you.
Comment in regards to the Dark Souls clone things, if my voice sounds stupid. Anyway, what happened in the game Saints Row 2, well, not a shining example of what you should do in real life. There's a gender slider, and I thought that was sort of similar to the Dark Souls.
Yeah, that was actually something that we were talking about bringing up, but unfortunately due to time issue, we didn't have a chance to do everything. But yeah, the Saints Row series has been very interesting, and it also allows you to play.
Yes, we've actually just had time called, so if anyone has any more questions, we'll be outside the theater, and we'll also be lurking around here for a few minutes. If anyone has any last-minute statements, just take a few seconds.
Real quick, it was coming to a panel like this several years ago, just to ride on Pick's coattails for a moment, that helped me deal with being trans, because there's a person there who said, you can contact me whenever you need to if you ever need to talk. I needed that email address 18 months later, and so if you want to go to my website and find my inbox whenever you need it, as long as it is operating, please feel free to send me an email. People should have people to talk to.
Any last-minute statement anyone wants to make?
Well, if any of you are transsexual and you want to know that you should check your HR department to see if there is a policy for transsexuals or non-discrimination. If there isn't one, ask HR to put one in.
If you have any further questions, please feel free to come up to us right outside.